Whilst The Simpsons' fierce mainstream popularity went a few years ago, there is still no denying the enormous impact that Matt Groening's legendary animation has had across the world. The Simpsons has winked at the audience many times over the course of its 33 seasons to date, drawing attention to its own creation and speaking to very specific portions of its viewer base through brilliantly sly, niche humour. In-jokes work precisely because we as humans love to know something that others don't. It makes us feel special and smart, and The Simpsons has exploited that with great intelligence and humour. And so with that in mind then, I'm Ellie with What Culture, here with 10 genius in-jokes in The Simpsons. Number 10. Paul and Linda McCartney's lentil soup recipe. The season 7 episode Lisa the Vegetarian is an all-time favourite amongst fans and critics alike, and contains some memorable guest appearances from Paul and Linda McCartney as themselves. While talking to Lisa, Paul explains that he's so committed to animal rights that if you play his song Maybe I'm Amazed backwards, you'll be able to hear the recipe for a really ripping lentil soup. This alone seems like a nod to the Beatles song Revolution 9, which had alleged hidden messages when played backwards. But it's also a nod to the general satanic panic of the 1980s, where Christian groups accused rock bands of hiding subliminal messages in their songs. Yet the episode does one better during its closing credits sequence, which are in fact set to Maybe I'm Amazed. Those few who bother to actually heed Paul's advice and play this modified version of the song backwards would indeed hear McCartney reciting a recipe for lentil soup. Even better, Paul can be heard saying, "By the way, I'm alive," in reference to the urban legend that he actually died in 1966 and was replaced by a lookalike. Number 9. Flanders' new voice actor. Season 10's Homer to the Max may not be a classic Simpsons episode, but it does contain one of the series' low-key cleverest inside gags. Early in the episode, Homer makes a crack about animated TV shows, saying, "Networks like animation because they don't have to pay the actors squat." A moment later, Ned Flanders appears at the window and spouts his single line of dialogue for the entire episode. Plus, they can replace them and no one can tell the diddly difference. The cherry on top here is that this clearly isn't the work of regular Ned voice actor Harry Shearer. It's a different voice that is markedly, hilariously different. Number 8. Animators cutting corners. Season 4's The Front sees Bart and Lisa write an episode of the Itchy and Scratchy Show and submit it under Grandpa Simpson's name, resulting in him being hired as a staff writer. The entire episode is a brilliant, relentless slew of in-jokes about both the animation industry and The Simpsons itself, and perhaps the standout gag occurs when Bart and Lisa visit Itchy and Scratchy Studios. While being toured around, Lisa mentions how expensive it must be to produce cartoons, to which company head Roger Myers Jr. replies, "Well, we cut corners. Sometimes to save money, our animators will reuse the same backgrounds over and over and over again." And just at that moment, anyone paying even the faintest attention will surely notice that the hallway they're walking down is itself recycled, featuring the same cleaning lady and door on a loop. It may not be subtle, but it is clever and, more importantly, very funny. Number 7. The No Soap Radio. Fan favourite Season 4 episode Homer the Heretic features a gag you might have seen dozens of times and never really understood, but laughed anyway. While Homer is singing Tom Jones's Delilah in the shower, we linger briefly on a shower radio bearing the label No Soap Radio. While the label seems to be a reference to the fact that the radio is waterproof, being in the shower and all, it's actually a reference to the surreal practical joke known as No Soap Radio. The prank involves telling a joke where the punchline has absolutely no relation to the setup, with the joke teller and bystanders in on the joke, acting like it's hilarious and ridiculing the recipient for failing to understand it. Now, at its core, No Soap Radio is an experiment on social norms, and particularly in the notion of conformity, given the number of targets of the prank who will begin to laugh just so that they don't appear stupid. Now, even today, No Soap Radio isn't a widely known gag. But before the internet in 1992, when this episode aired, You'd have to be a pretty clever cookie to have caught on to it unprompted. Number 6. Seymour's cameo. Much as many might not believe it, many Simpsons fans haven't seen Futurama, save for the crossover episode Simpsons-rama, which aired during the Simpsons' 26th season. And while the episode as a whole is a fairly broad cross-pollination of Matt Groening's two most beloved animated shows, there is one killer gag which left Futurama fans heartbroken and everyone else none the wiser. At one point in the episode, we see Homer Simpson, Bender, Fry, and Leela crossing the street to Panucci's Pizza, a Futurama staple that's somehow now in Springfield. And for a second, we focus on a small dog briefly waking up and falling back asleep. Those who don't watch Futurama will be absolutely oblivious, but even the most casual fan won't ever forget that dog. That dog is Seymour, Fry's pet, who in one of the series' most heart-wrenching episodes, Jurassic Bark, is shown waiting faithfully for a missing Fry to return, ultimately dying of old age before finding out that Fry fell into a cryotube. Now, this devastating revelation was admittedly retconned in the Futurama film Bender's Big Score, but to many fans it remains the series' emotional high point. Seeing Seymour waking up and just barely missing Fry as he walks past was then like twisting the knife in fans' aching hearts. As a small bout of solace, this episode is at least accepted to be non-canon by many. Number 5. SNEED'S Feed and Seed. Season 11's EI annoyed grunt boasts one of the most infamous in-jokes in the show's history, so much so that it has become an internet meme in recent years. The iconic scene sees Homer pulling up to a convenience store called SNEED'S Feed and Seed, with lettering below it reading, formerly Chuck's. This seems harmless and forgettable enough until you consider the very lewd implications of the signage. Given that Sneed, Feed and Seed all rhyme, it can be inferred that Chuck's version also rhymed. And if we're following the same lettering convention with each subsequent word starting with F and S, well, you can guess what it might have said. Now, this all started as a rumour, but the episode's writer did eventually confirm it as genuine on Twitter. There's hiding a filthy joke in plain sight, and then there's burying one so ingeniously deep that even most adults don't notice it. Number 4. PIXAR'S A113 Easter egg. A113 is one of the most iconic in-jokes in animation history, used primarily by Disney and Pixar employees to immortalize the classroom where they learned the craft of character animation. A113 has, as a result, appeared in Easter egg form in countless Disney Pixar movies, video games, and TV shows, and this includes The Simpsons. One of Pixar's most successful directors, Brad Bird, got the ball rolling by including A113 as Krusty the Clown's prison number in Krusty Gets Busted, and it also appeared as mugshot and prison uniform numbers for Sideshow Bob in the episodes Cape Fear and Sideshow Bob's Last Gleaming. Additionally, it was also visible as Bart's mugshot number in the music video for the 1990 hit song Do the Bartman. Given the numerous Disney Pixar personnel who cut their teeth working on The Simpsons, including Wreck-It Ralph and Zootopia director Rich Moore, there's been quite the connection forged between the two properties. Number 3. Homer's Burnt Tongue. Season 20's Father Knows Worst offers a wink-wink gag that at once is extremely naughty but is also designed to go sailing over kids' heads, and also underlining Marge's endearing naivety. While at the carnival, Homer burns his tongue after accidentally eating a flaming stick and being tricked into drinking lighter fluid by Bart. His tongue is put in a cast, at which point Dr. Hibbert warns Marge, "I'm afraid his tongue will be in that cast for a few weeks. It may put something of a cramp in your lovemaking." The obvious implication that Homer won't be giving Marge any oral stimulation for a few weeks is blissfully ignored by her, who replies, "No, it won't. If he wants me to do something, he'll just write it down." Even with the mention of lovemaking, this is a pretty G-rated, child-friendly joke on the surface, but any adult watching will be cracking up at the strange sweetness of Marge's response. Number 2. A perfectly cromulent word. Season 7's Lisa the Iconoclast opens with Lisa's class watching a film about Springfield's founding father, Jebediah Springfield, who utters the town's iconic motto, A noble spirit embiggens the smallest man. At this point, we cut to Mrs. Krabappel and Miss Hoover, with the former asking, "Embiggens? I'd never heard that word before moving to Springfield." To which Hoover replies, "I don't know why, it's a perfectly cromulent word." Later in the episode, Principal Skinner also says of Homer's town crier audition, he's embiggened that role with his cromulent performance. The joke here is, of course, that while embiggens is a word that was created by the show's writer's room, so too was cromulent, despite being used here as an adjective. And yet, cromulent seems plausible enough that most viewers probably just assumed that it was in fact a word and they just didn't know what it meant, as opposed to embiggens, whose meaning is implied through its context. This is a perfect example of a snake eating its own tail joke, whilst also ingeniously toying around with how we use and understand language. Number 1. Brevity is wit. Some of the best jokes have layers of understanding, which allows people to interpret them on different levels. And that is absolutely the case with this killer gag in Season 3's Mr. Lisa Goes to Washington. The episode includes the Reader's Digest parody magazine, Reading Digest, which holds a children's essay writing contest that Lisa enters. The welcome sign includes a quotation, "Brevity is wit," which is a clear contraction of Polonius's iconic quote from Shakespeare's Hamlet, "Brevity is the soul of wit." Now, on the surface, this is a clever meta joke about abbreviation, but if you were alive in the 1980s and 1990s, then you might remember Reader's Digest as the very popular magazine known for republishing articles from other magazines but in highly condensed form. And the Simpsons banner here is first and foremost a direct reference to that. Quite literally, the soul of the Shakespeare quote has been omitted. I mean, jokes don't get much cleverer and more multifaceted than that. And that concludes our list. If you can think of any that we missed, then do let us know in the comments below. And while you're there, don't forget to like and subscribe and tap that notification bell. Also, head over to Twitter and follow us there, and I can be found across various social medias just by searching Ellie Littlechild. I've been Ellie with What Culture. I hope you have a magical day, and I'll see you real soon.